Welcome everybody back to the Spinner Rack. I'm here with my boy PD. Hey, we're talking about the new hit show on CBS All Access called Picard. Of course, this is taken off from this is from the producer of Discovery, Alex Kurtzman. This is their second try of trying to get the Star Trek franchise up and running. While Discovery has had a lot of mixed reviews. Some people love it. Some people hate it.
No, the thing is, no, stop going to, no, stop. The show is a glowing success, which of course allowed them to do other things. There's 2 seasons of Discovery, allowed them to do shorts, and also allowed them to do another Star Trek spinoff, which is Picard. There are critics. We can't say that the critics are wrong. I guess Red Letter Media, they have strong opinions as far as both Picard and Discovery. But it's a success. It is a success. Continue.
So everybody has their opinion, but continuing onward, when Picard first came out, it had, according to CBS All Access, it had over 115% rating relative to Discovery when it first came out. So just trying to show there was a lot of pent-up demand. So when they first brought out Picard at the cons and they explained through Alex Kurtzman, what type of show they're going to have, there was huge fan interest. There's huge fan interest in the internet for all of us Star Trek fans. But now the show has actually premiered. The show has actually gone through, and now we are going to see what our reactions are to it. So let me just break up the little premise of it. Basically, Picard, this is Picard. He's retired from Starfleet, and he gets introduced to a mission. He's been having dreams about Data, and this is all central to what's going to happen. Now, the question is, why is he having dreams about Data? That's what I've been saying for the longest. But let me put it on to my boy, PD. PD, take it up from there, give people a brief synopsis, and then let's go on from there.
Well, I mean, didn't you just give a brief synopsis of it? Okay,
so I'll the baton to you. Do whatever you want to do.
One of the things is Data. Obviously, Data is a big. Data is a big part of this show, and he's almost more of a subplot in it, but he kind of drives the entire show because there was some incident in the past that caused them to get rid of all the synthetics. So we start off and we meet this girl. But she's attacked. But of course, it's like most of these it's almost like the same thing like what's those things? Oh man, Serenity, like the movie Serenity, but like Firefly and Serenity. It starts out someone's doing karate and whatnot. Yeah, but it's like it starts out like that, like every other show that has that. So you're like, when I saw that in the trailer, I was like, it looks cool, but this is how it all sort of starts. So I was like, oh man, this is how it starts. But come on, they already did it in Serenity in the movie version because the chick who doesn't say anything, she became like this martial arts master. And hold on, so it's this big fight with this girl, which we find out later. She's, we find her past, but she's on the run, and she decides to go to Picard, who's on this vineyard. Everything that they talked about, obviously, his brother had a vineyard and whatnot. Now he's had and Mars can give you the history on what the vineyard means as far as his character. But he's there, this girl comes, and he feels compelled to help her out. And then, obviously going to Starfleet and doing some things. It leads to the biggest twist in the first episode. And I really wasn't expected. That was what was cool to me, because she's still being hunted at the same time Picard is trying to help her. And it leads to the next thread of the entire thing. So let's not get to the spoilers yet. But that's my premise for the first episode, where he's trying to figure out what's going on there. And then I think in the second episode, they get to the incident that happened with the synthetics that caused them to be outlawed.
So just to give a little further background for the story here, this really takes place after the movie Nemesis, right? Star Trek Nemesis. Picard, where there's a destruction.
We will not talk Nemesis. No, I'm sorry. I just had, it was a jerk reaction. Sorry. The nemesis.
And the destruction of the home world for the Romulus. You know, it's kind of weird that the destruction of that world had such an impact. You know, on a star empire where you figure it's in Star Empire there'll be another replacement. Like if Washington D.C. got destroyed, and we hope that doesn't happen. But I'm saying you figure another city will pick up the slack, like New York. You know, it's just thought that, but that's neither here nor there. That's my criticism thing. But the Romulus, the whole thing is that the Romulans have been destroyed. The home world has been destroyed. Picard was deeply involved in the evacuation, and at the same time, you had synthetics who basically destroyed one of the largest bases for Starfleet over on Mars, and so that's when became the outlawing of all synthetics. I believe that was where they just said, "Hey, we're no longer going to have these guys around," and that's a mystery. So these things happened while Picard was trying to help the Romulans, and there was a lot of people who were like, don't help the Romulans, these evacuate. Then you had the whole destruction of the Mars fleet yards by the synthetics. You know, it caused a lot of things, and of course, Picard's personal authority. You know, being a diplomat, one of the greatest captains of Starfleet, being the leader of the Enterprise. You know, was hugely affected, and basically he retired afterwards because, you know, his time basically had passed. And now we're seeing him, a couple of years, decade later, after this, or decades later after this, these incidents have occurred. You know, he's basically been, I wouldn't say forgotten, but, you know, time has passed, and he just gave up, and he just went to his vineyard, took over from his brother. I think he said his brother's family had passed or something like that. So he's now in charge of the vineyard, and he's living there with actually two Romulans who are, which is interesting because both of them were, is it Tal Shiar, I believe it is, who were basically Romulan spies, and, you know, similar people that he helped. And they act as his domestics. But it's a pretty interesting dynamic.
You're saying that they're his slaves?
No, not slaves. I'm just saying they act, one as a chef and the other one is like his aide. But I think, you know, I wish they're interesting characters in themselves because when they're attacked, you know. So what happens? This girl that we're looking for, the girl, the main character who comes to Picard, who basically helps to stimulate this whole thing that goes on. She is she's basically being I think her name was Daj or Dala Daj.
Daj. Yeah. Well, the one person who meets him is Daj.
Right, Daj. So Daj is she's one of the twin. She was studying. She was attacked. They are being attacked by Romulans. It looks like, you know, with their they're hiding their thought. They're initially were hiding their who they are. And you're like, why are they doing this? You know, I'm trying to say. And when she goes to Picard, they come after her there too. You know, and this is one of the things that helps to galvanize Picard to help. So the question is it a plot by them to move Picard out of there? Like, you know, a chess piece. Do this, this would move somewhere else. Or is this really a call for help? My initial thought about all that is I was thinking that it was going to be, you know, let's move Picard from A to B, basically. You know, we bring Daj there, then we bring the Romulans there, then you're forced to go to some other place, right? Like someone is pushing him forward. But in reality, it wasn't that difficult. He really was, you know, he was trying to solve what's going on. Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening after that, Daj, she goes with Daj to try to investigate, and Daj ends up dying. But he finds out that she has a twin.
No, wait, that's all right. You already went to the spoilers. You didn't set up. Now you're just going, all right, we're not doing a straight Kevin Smith, start from one end, go to the end, right? Right?
Blah.
If you start with Dodge and you tell them that she died, you can't just keep mowing along with the thing like that wasn't a big moment.
It was a big moment that Dodge died, so.
Because this is what the trailer said was the whole part of the whole thing, that this girl comes in for help and ultimately she passes. Right?
Yeah.
So then where do we go?
I thought the fact that she's that I thought there was other things that were bigger than that, but you know, probably.
What was bigger than that in the first? Say what the bigger things are.
That she was synthetic.
Yes, but I'm saying you were moving past that to some more stuff, and
And the Borg cube.
we're getting to that. That's coming next.
You asked me, and I'm giving you the
No, no,
stuff.
no. But I'm saying that the death of this. The thing is, like, we watch a trailer. The trailer is like this girl comes to Picard for help, and then when coming for help, because she's directed to go to Picard, right? So she's directed to go to Picard, and then that kind of falls apart. And this whole thing, the whole thing could end this episode, right? Because he's like, all right, but then that's one point later he realizes that she has a sister, which she talks to on the phone before that. And that leads us to the Borg cube, all the stuff we know Paramount wants to see. They want to see some Borg stuff. So now it's what do they call the Borg cube? Mars?
Called the Borg Reclamation Project.
But they had a name, the artifact. They call it the artifact. So like with the artifact, they have the Borg cube, or I guess would be the last one, and they've been exploring it, and it's actual Borg people that are turned back to human on this thing, and that also what's her name? Soji, she has her boyfriend that's there, who's also connected to this whole Romulan plot. So now I want to take a talk to go to. Now in the Next Generation, the Romulans were the big bad in that series. Were they the guys that were the really bad ones in this?
The Next Generation, you had a couple of big bads. You had definitely Romulans. You definitely still had the Klingons still going on and stuff. No, the Romulans were not the only big bad. They were there, and they were definitely huge. But there was also the Klingons. The Klingons made a huge difference in them because prior to the Next Generation, there were accords called the Khitomer Accords, where the Romulans and the Starfleet try to come to some accommodations, but it didn't. It was an uneasy peace, and so there's constant pulling at the chains, I guess, by the Klingons to try to break that, to show who they truly are,
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you have the whole duality with Worf, trying who's he really loyal to? Is he loyal to the Federation? Is he loyal to the Klingons? So I mean, it's interesting, and this is why people were upset with Discovery when they made the Klingons look like weirdos, and then just totally throw them out.
We're digressing, but at the same time, every Star Trek has a different sort of Klingons. They do a little something different as it goes along.
They look like monsters. How in the world would Worf have been born? What woman or man would have lain with a Klingon if they look like that? Like,
they're Klingons.
You had to open your eyes and said, "Hey, bro, just do what you got to do." You know what I'm trying to say?
They're giving you, well, I mean, they're going too far as evolution, but evolution doesn't work that way. They wouldn't look that much different. And the ultimate thing is they're kind of hinting without saying that they're going through sort of a different look and how we got to the ones that we got in the original series. But that's all of it. Now,
that's it. But I just want to make the point.
So what were the Romulans in the Next Generation then?
Yes, they are. They definitely play a part in the Next Generation, and they're considered one of the more aggressive races out there. I mean, there's only really in the Next Generation 3 main antagonists, and that's the 4. You have the Klingons, the Romulans, the Borg, and the Cardassians. And the Cardassians more.
Cardassians?
Yeah, when they helped to set
Kim
up.
Kardashian and all of them, they're real. I knew it. I knew those Kardashians, and I knew they were no good.
And they helped to set up things at the end. But listen, continue with this. That's we digress. But look, so overall, so we're moving. Let's get to the Genesis. There's just a couple of big things that are running through this. Picard is basically the main character throughout this whole series, right? And he's connecting a lot because of he connects a bunch of different dots.
The story.
So one portion.
Well, I mean, we're doing the story, right? So the story, it becomes about Soji. It's like everything shifts. What we have a character development, because the person is a twin, she has a life, whereas, was it Raj? She's kind of cool with things. She looks at Picard as someone that can help her, and Soji is like on a different angle. She's thrust into it. Her boyfriend, who's a Romulan, starts bringing the stuff out of her, and then she's like, but she's not accepting it, and that leads to the biggest conflict in this story. That Picard is helping someone. At the same time, a lot of these people don't want the help. The Starfleet doesn't want him to touch this. Soji's not interested in it, and he gets this ragtag group of people to come on a quest that maybe an old man just wanted to reclaim what he had in the past. But this wears, and this is a thread that's in most of the Star Trek. Are you too old to, I think Spock says, are we too old that we outlived our usefulness? And this sort of plays to that, because most of the time when people get old, like there's Decker in the original series, there's the Admiral that called Picard on being a Borg, there's Sarek, there's this large thread that once you get too old, that you gotta be pulled, the captain has to be pulled away from the command. And this is played throughout. Whereas Picard also accepts some things here. He's not as hard-edged as he was. He accepts some faults. But we get to it and we keep going. And that's the interesting part is this just a flight of fancy, or is he right? And I think we find out he does do things for the right reasons. It's not just ego and missing the former thing. But now, what? Sorry, you can tell me. You can say I'm wrong. You know about this more than me.
So no, I'm just saying that if you don't think that this whole thing was a flight of fancy for Picard to try to regain, some of his credibility, they called him out. I think someone called him out. So after the whole Romulan debacle, when he was unable to get the stuff that he just, as opposed to fighting for it in other ways, like fighting to help the Romulans with the evacuations and stuff like that, he just gave up and just retired to his thing. He's like, well, you know what? Starfleet ain't going to do it. I just can't do it. And so there was this little boy, Elnor, I believe his name was, who was an orphan who looked up to Picard. He used to go to the sisterhood of Romulan sisterhood. And they
of assassins. We keep killing the fun parts of the show.
Gonna save it for later, but hey.
What later? We're gonna get to all your issues, and we're not gonna get to that they were assassins, and we get another cool, like, it's not like a Spock character, but it is like a version of Spock, because he's like a adopted son. Warrior. Yep. And he has one of the best lines. There's two biggest laughs I have in there when he's like, when he goes to this new land of, and that's the thing, he goes there and he's not welcome there. That's one of the things, we keep getting good conflict in this series, which is a lot.
But I'm saying we're getting good conflicts, and it helps to. One of the good things here is that they show that instead of rah rah rah, he's a hero and a thing. People are kind of resentful, particularly the Romulans, and people saying like, hey, this guy is the donkey. Well, first of all, Federation, the Space Fleet, the Starfleet looks at him like, hey, this guy's Don Quixote. He's shooting at windmills, and he's trying to fight back and stuff to help the Romulans or the synthetics. But at the same time, you have the issue that the Romulans, they see him as a traitor, or someone who help them fail. Where I think millions of people, probably billions of people, may have died because Starfleet didn't help out in their evacuation before the destruction of their planet. But it's just, to me, interesting that he's just not just a hero, and that's very good. He has like this hero complex where he has to do something, where he feels that he has to go out there and help this girl dodge, and then find out what happened to her, and then he meets up with her sister Soji, who's on the Borg Reclamation project, and while she's there, she's trying to discover more about what's going on with the Borg. And we're trying to understand more who Soji is, because she's the Romulans control there's a treaty basically about the artifact of the Borg Reclamation Project. The Borg Reclamation Project is it's like an international foundation involving Federation of other countries, where they look into what's going on with the Borg Reclamation, with the Borg cube. And this is a cube that was cut off from the rest of the Borg collective. So they're trying to I don't say deactivate, but reintegrate some of the people who were captured, humans and Romulans who were captured and others, and make them come back into society. But there's a whole host of problems. They're still connected psychologically, getting off all that gear off of them. It can be done, but reintegrating them. So you have that issue there with also Picard coming in, who was formerly Locutus, who was once a Borg himself. So getting back to Soji's involved in this project, and then there's a Romulan that she's having carnal relations with, and he is actually, I'm not unsure about him. He's having feelings for her. He has clear like and dislike. His sister's part of this underground Illuminati cabal, which permeates Starfleet and the Romulan homeworld. So if you talk to Tal Shihar was devious, these guys are even a deeper level than that.
All right. All right. Also, I want America to know that it sounds like he's kind of not recognizing that I said some of this stuff in here. He's just slacking, and we're having a battle of Trekker in Mars and Trekkie, who guys like saying, "Hey, I just enjoy this stuff. I don't need the science to work. I don't need the books to go on." He's just like, "I'm gonna say what he just said because I think my thing is correct." He's like, he's trying to act like, he just supersede what I'm saying. But ultimately, you're going off past these cool characters and this cool stuff that's there. And it's just like, when this character, the siblings of, what's the name, Soji's boyfriend, there's more of a connection between them than what we're seeing. And they're playing it.
So her boyfriend's name is Narek, right?
Yes.
And I mean, his job is to seduce and Soji basically, and try to find out who and what she really is and what she's up to, because Soji's this brilliant scientist and she's trying to do stuff.
But his sister Narissa, she's really flirtatious with the brother. They're really playing it close.
Yeah, it's a weird relationship there. It's a weird relationship. That's all I gotta say. It's a little tight.
So you have some elements of stuff we haven't seen, and when we start to meet the cast, well, before we meet the cast, there's elements in here that are a little different than what we know, even when 7 of 9 shows up. But there's a lot of different characters in this thing.
7 of 9, why do you have to go let the cat out the bag, bro?
We already know it's in the trailer.
Yes, 7 of 9. And 7 of 9.
And you're giving up. You're not sticking with that. Data is the key to make. They already set up that he's drawing this painting, which is daughter. That this is a connection to Data. Data, I guess I didn't see the last episode, but he died heroically for the Enterprise. So at the same time, you have this element. This is Picard's main thing, not just like sort of the first Star Trek movie where he's like, I found a way to get my command back. He's just like, this is a connection to Data, and then maybe we can bring Data back because he's a synthetic. And that he doesn't need to die. Like we can die, but Data can go along. But Data, of course, is he's more than human. He's a step above. He's less human, and at times people look at him as more than human. So I want to hear some. The thing is, like, you're not. It doesn't sound like you're having any fun with this. You kind of feeling like you're. You know what? We gotta make the sausage. And you're like putting the meat in and you're putting it in the casing and it's just like, yeah, so this happens and this happens. Was there nothing cool that happened for you, or when did that happen for you?
Okay, I thought there was a lot of things that were cool. I thought there was a lot of interesting concepts that they introduced. For me, it was more character driven in terms of the characters. I did like the Daj and Soji. I probably liked the first 2/3 of the show versus the last part of it. I thought that Picard, I was expecting him to be the savior, hero, but I'm glad they didn't make him that. initially, and that he had problems. I mean, come on, when you see him fencing with somebody, you're like, are you freaking for real? The man can't handle that. He looks frail enough to just go, and he'll be blown over. But the fact that they brought in Eleanor as the samurai Romulan for him, that definitely helps out. But then he's like Data in a way that he misses some of the subtleties of conversation and what's happening. He just is a one way. I like the whole relationship between Narek and his sister, because it showed that there's some type of tension there. But I think to me the crew was interesting. That we didn't talk about the doctor. There was a doctor who specializes in synthetics, and she's looking for a former lover who disappeared or died or whatever. And they're trying to. That's part of the whole thing with Dodge. They're trying to find out what's happening. And this deals with Data, and that they're like, oh, how was he able to replicate someone? Because Dodge and Soji are synthetics. Okay, I'm letting that count out the bag. And that's one of the reasons why Narek is getting closer, because they're trying to find out where she came from, who could have made a synthetic like this. So the doctor, she's fascinated by this stuff. And so before she says she's not going to go on a trip with them, and then she changes her mind. And you find out later that I'm going to say it. Can I say it?
What?
That she was basically told by Starfleet to spy on them, to go on the trip and spy on them. And so by doing that,
well, it's worse. It's a little worse than that, but we don't know. The thing is, I think that was kind of the deal breaker for a lot of critics and fans, because we know that the Romulans who are in Starfleet, right? They kind of not just told her, they kind of put a tracker in her. They kind of, we don't know how much they affected her brain. And was she mind controlled, or was she just so pissed off at what she saw? Does she do some terrible things in sticking with Starfleet? That's one of the things that she's, I think, kind of the deal breaker for a lot of.
And it's that moral conundrum. She finally finds her former lover, and she ends up killing him. So not only has she betrayed the crew by joining on false pretenses, she also is being tracked by. So the Federation people that she's dealing with are actually this Illuminati cabal of Romulans who've existed before the Tau Shidar, who basically are there to stop the destroyer from destroying their planet and the world and stuff like that. But is based on the thought that synthetic or some type of being like that would be the ones to destroy it. And so that's why this whole looking to Soji and Dodge while they were chasing them, because they figured, hey, they were going to be the ones, or there may be a world of synthetic. And so that's what's going on. So yeah, but to me, what's troubling is that, and I think this is a trend in a lot of shows where, where you have a character like that, the doctor who the explanation is, oh, she was mind controlled by them or whatever, or she was coerced, but she lets the character die. She literally helps that character. And she's kind of rehabilitated at the end, but it's like, there's one thing between rehabilitating someone who stole something. It's a difference between rehabilitating somebody who killed. And I think we keep going under that premise. And one thing I liked about Star Trek is that the original Next Generation stuff is that there's some type of moral ground. You can't do certain things like that and just come back. I mean, yeah, you have to go through a process. Characters did stuff like that, but this was like in a couple of episodes, man, it's like, hey, let's move on. Narek tried to kill Soji, and it's like, we're just trying to get together. I love you or whatever. We have to.
I think it's also the sort of the X-Men factor, like the Rogue or anyone that was a bad guy. If they're with the good guys, ultimately it's okay. They made a mistake, and now we kind of move on. And it was kind of like that.
Murder is a serious thing. You know what I'm trying to say? There has to be a line run, sure, but murder, death, pre-planned murder. Let's say if she was coerced, you're going to say, oh, well, yeah, she was coerced. But still, it's murder. You have to have a choice.
But they mind controlled her. They didn't say it. That's what people have an issue. Did they?
That's exactly. If they would have said she was mind controlled, then you have an out. But they never said that.
Yeah,
I think it was left intentionally ambiguous. What's that show we used to watch? It's called Suits. And one of the main characters says, whenever we're presented with an issue, even when your back is against the wall, there's still 1,001 ways to get out of it. Okay. Yeah. Whether or not you can see it or not, it's your job to figure it out. You got to try everything possible to get there. You just don't just simply fold. And of course, not everybody can do that. That main character, he's constantly playing both ends of the stick and trying to do stuff. But to me, they don't try that enough. The characters don't say, hey, they're like, oh, I'm at the wall. I don't know what to do. Narek, for example, his job was to cheat, was to get Soji, and yes, he was conflicted. I mean, I wouldn't say conflicted, but he kind of ended up liking Soji. It seems he caught feelings for her, but his sister kept on reminding him what he was supposed to do, and though he wasn't crazy about it in the end, because he liked Soji, he kept to his plan. And when he tried to kill Soji, you could tell that he wasn't like enjoying. Yeah, I want to kill this chick. I think she's a threat. I think that she's going to destroy us, and that's why I'm killing her. I'm trying to get rid of her so she doesn't cause this threat.
Well,
and
sorry.
I
was going to something different.
I'm talking a lot, So I don't know. My problem I had with the Doctor. I liked one of the big, to me, standouts to the show was clearly the captain. Man. The captain, to me, of the ship. Because remember, Picard is no longer the captain. He has to get a ship. So you have his former first mate, his first officer, Raffi, I believe it is. Raffi. So again, that's another issue. She's having substance abuse issues, as a former first officer and some of the things.
You don't want that in Star Trek? You don't want the Harlan Ellison substance abuse in Star Trek?
It's there. They've done a couple of episodes in different shows and stuff like that. But I didn't want to. I wasn't expecting it to be to the degree it was. But the guy playing Cristobal, oh my gosh, he was hilarious. You have Cristobal, and he has a decent backstory. And Cristobal, the thing that I liked about him was that, and all his emergency holograms, that are basically just aspects of him. Some come with different accents, and it's just hilarious.
He's sort of like a Han Solo that would rather have been a actual accepted in Starfleet. So he's you had that back thing, and when the episode that kind of tied everything together for me, when they went to the gambling planet, right? Was it Baziz? Like when they went to see that chick, I was like, all right, come on, this is like, remember Star Wars? Was it The Last Jedi? In The Last Jedi, they went to this thing. There's no way you can do this well. It's gonna fall apart. And they go there, and Picard's got a patch. He is hamming it up, and he is hilarious. And it's one of the best things, and that's one of the things that I think really sold it for me, because it was almost like a different reaction than when he got to the original Star Trek generation. He was like, this has to be serious. And now he's like, oh, I got a place where I can play. I'm gonna ham it up. And he was overdoing it. And I saw you shake your head while I was talking, but he has that moment, and 7 of 9 has another moment where they have this thing between, was it Baziz and 7 of 9, but it's like a lot of heavy, cool stuff. And you find that 7 of 9 is working on her own thing. So that really was exciting for me because it was fun. And I didn't think it was going to be, I thought it was just going to be like, okay, how are they going to play this out? But it was a lot of fun to me. And it looked like it was going to be the captain scene, but it was actually Picard comes in there, does some cool stuff. The captain gets to do some cool stuff. 7 of 9 slips in there, and we got all this stuff going on at the same time.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I personally didn't like that whole scene that you described that you love, but yeah, I see. I thought 7 of 9 was,
I really connect. I've had fun with it.
I thought 7 of 9 was a standout, and I thought he did a great job. She did a great job there. I like the fact that, and I think she's the character who told, one of the characters, because he was told more than once, that when Picard basically went underground, she, and I forgot what they call the Rangers, her and her Rangers were the ones trying to help keep the world, the outer systems a better place, And it's kind of sad that she had to pick up that mantle, where Picard and Starfleet, because now we're looking at a Starfleet that's much more jaded and there's much more political. And I guess they're trying to reflect the times that we are now. But, one of the things Roddenberry's vision was to always be aspirational, in terms of things getting better. The whole world is is there's no currency. There is no there's no hunger in the world. There's no war in the world. You know, all that stuff is outside the world. But here you can see that, you know, there are petty problems and issues happening where they would let people all die, a whole world die, where they'll destroy, get rid of synthetics, just be simply not even try to investigate the issue, why it happened. So I find all those issues a little scary. You can definitely see it happening. As I mean, Roddenberry's vision is they've gotten a little darker. Like one of my favorite shows, DS9, and yet you saw how dark that show got down. It really did, and some fans were thrown off by that, and that's why they did Voyager. But it's
You think Voyager is a good answer to Deep Space Nine? People love Deep Space Nine.
No, people love Deep Space Nine because it's episodic. You see, look, one of the things is that when you have episodic shows, it's like the Next Generation and the original Star Trek. You can just watch the show and leave, and come back next week and see something different. People doing stuff, you know. But when you have DS9, you have the war with they're dealing with the Kardashians, then the whole war with the Dominion, the whole Klingon war, the whole what's the name of the Maquis incident that happened in the beginning. So there's a bunch of, so you have to be there and watch them connect and see how those all go together. You don't necessarily have to sit down and see all of Star Trek Next Generation. You can, the cutest thing, I think, is like 2 episodes, and then probably 3 or 4 more later episodes after that. You know?
No, it's not.
I'm saying related. They don't do just that.
They did. The whole thing of him, they just showed it when they did, was it St. Patrick's Stewart Day? They just had it on St. Patrick's Day. They did St. Patrick's Stewart's Day on, I forget which channel, but they showed the cutest episode, right? So they had that. And then next thing you know, the next episode is, I think he goes back, they had a shore leave, he goes to the vineyard, and he's like having trouble connecting. He keeps having these flashes. And then the next thing is we got Hugh, where he goes to Hugh and he flips out and he says, "You are Borg, you must do this." That he tries to catch, what's the name? I think Hugh's acting in that really turned me off because he looked like very shifty. He was like, and he would answer the question. I was like, that looks kind of shifty, but we'll get to Hugh in a second. And then the next one was the whole Admiral. So it was a thread that was going through the episodes after they did the Borg thing. They really...
No, I get that. I was just saying the specific episodes where he was the cutest and he came back. You know, what I'm just saying is that there were a couple, I think 3 or 4 more episodes after that. Did it not influence other episodes? Yes, you know. But my point is that it's not the same thing as the whole Dominion War, where from beginning to end, where they're losing and there's different phases and they have to leave. I think it's a different thing. And Voyager gave us where it's a more episodic, where you can not necessarily watch all of these different things because they're constantly moving. They're going across the universe. So they may have a enemy in one section, but eventually they get past it and then they're not going back to that. You know, they're dealing with other things. They will encounter the Borg.
Weren't they in the whole thing of trying to get home? They were in the Gilligan's Island of Star Trek.
Right, but I'm saying it was designed to.
I get you.
Where again, then we have people who are like, hey, we want more of what happened with DS9. So Enterprise was and I loved Enterprise. Parts of it is that it was more connected, where it's Scott Bakula, one of my favorite captains, you know.
Because nobody says that they liked Enterprise.
I like Enterprise.
They had a babe. What's her name? Rick Berman should never be allowed to do anything with with the Vulcans. Like, don't give him like he told in Voyager. They totally gave up on Tuvok. They're just like, come on.
Look, let me show you something right here. You see this book? This is my DS9 companion, right? This is what I have. I had a Star Trek companion book too, you know, which basically broke down the book. And I also had the Star Trek encyclopedia. I literally burned the books because...
You did not burn the books, everybody.
No, I no longer have them. I no longer have those books. My remaining Star Trek are that and this.
Why would you burn them? Because you saw the movies? I get it. That makes sense.
The movies pissed me off. And even when they were doing Voyager not so much, but Enterprise, when they were introducing...
You liked when The Rock was on Voyager, right?
When they introduced...
You're not connecting. I'm throwing shots at you and you're not trying to connect it. You're trying to move forward.
It's a serious friggin' episode, bro. And you taking it as a joke, and I'm taking
This is
it like
the Trekkie versus Trekker fight.
no, we're not having a fight. I'm saying I'm telling you the law, and that's how it rocks. We're not gonna go. I burnt my whole connection, which was like probably like 12 books deep.
Why?
And I was like so pissed off and turned off. So when Discovery came back and when Picard came back, I was like, okay, let's try and do this again. But basically, I was like,
You gotta
look,
give up the Berman thing. It's over.
yeah, okay, it's over. So getting back to the story, we digress. Look, the element of the Borg Reclamation Project, you have that where it's like an international treaty, and the Romulans who discovered or it was in Romulan space, they physically control it, but they allow scientists such as Soji and others to come. And guess who's head of that whole reclamation project with diplomatic status? That's our boy.
Who?
Hugh. Hugh. So who would have thought? That's one of
the character I did not like.
He was a character, the fact that he was able to overcome, because all his parts have been taken off. And he is not a director, he's much older, and he's trying to help those.
I'm going here. Good old Frank Miller.
And how does that relate?
Frank Miller called Hugh the Hot Borg. That obviously everyone fell in love with Hugh. They they had a character, and it's like to imagine John Byrne and Frank Miller talking Star Trek is some of the best stuff. And he was like, and Frank Miller's words to Byrne was that Hugh was the hot boy. But I didn't connect with. I know people connected with Hugh. I didn't connect with him. I think more so because they were really trying to push forward that this character could be assimilated, but at the same time break free and find his new way. But at the same time, the damn Prime Directive has him going back into the Borg, and I'm just like, like get rid of the Prime Directive should not be ironclad. But he's
in this universe, it's definitely not ironclad. Okay, it's clearly not ironclad.
Yes.
Working, okay, but in previous universes, yeah, and they really haven't dealt with the Prime Directive. Really, they definitely touched on it in
it's like us dealing with the Constitution. It wouldn't come up.
Yeah, well, you can work with them, but Voyager dealt with it. They have some pretty good stories, and there, and so did Enterprise, because you can't. You really have to think about it. If anybody can just go there and just do whatever they have to do, you're just going to totally mess everything up. Look, the problem that I had, let's just get down to it.
Another problem
is that, is the problem that they've had with the movies and things. These were ensemble shows, right?
Yes.
All right, but the movies become focused on Picard, Data, somewhat Riker. It doesn't give you, because that's how movies, they usually want to have a focal point on which to focus the movie on, right? But it's like, it takes you away from the essence of what Picard was. Picard was a diplomat. He was the father figure, and of course, as time went on, that the initial thought of this is what you're going to be to what you ended up. Picard is more action hero, jumping into different things, when that should have been Riker's role all along. Riker was designed to be the Captain Kirk of he was supposed to go on the away mission. I mean, when you are the head of a ship like Star Trek, Enterprise, you are almost the lead ship in the whole Federation, with a storied history. You're practically an admiral. Once you retire, once you give up that ship, you become an admiral. Remember, that's one of the reasons Kirk didn't want to give it up. He loved being out there flying all the time. Admirals are usually behind the desk or leading fleets, and these guys want to lead their ship. And I just felt that it didn't show the proper great. I think that they hinted at what could have happened in Next Generation for him, what could have happened to Riker, Riker getting his own command and all that type of stuff. But I just felt that it didn't go there. And this show continues that whole premise in that, Riker is now a reserve captain or leader of a fleet and stuff like that. I liked Riker, and I thought that he was badly underutilized. But one thing
I wanted more Riker?
I wanted more.
Okay, all right.
Riker and his wife.
I'm gonna stop you because it's called Star Trek Picard. So we have some new characters, which would be, so since that's the thing, Picard, with the struggle that the actor Patrick Stewart was having, was like, are we just gonna do a reunion show? And the thing is that they didn't just do a reunion show. They did a Picard show with a new cast. It's like Frasier, right? The only problem is that Picard was the leader of the original show. So it's a kind of a funky restart. It's almost like I Love Lucy and Here's Lucy, but if Here's Lucy was actually fun, you know? So it's like we had a whole new cast of characters, and then we got to see where some of the past characters are. We're thinking we're going to get to see more Data. We get to see Riker and Deanna Troi. We get to see them, and they're in a really strong place. They have a past that's haunting them, but they're going forward. Picard's a little different as far as his kids and whatnot, and that sort of thing. So it's like things are happening. Then we slowly starting to see stuff that we got Hugh comes in, got that sort of thing. And I don't want to get away from the other new characters, because who's it? The Romulan that was his protector. What's his
Elnor.
name?
Elnor.
So like he decides that like one of the best lines in it is like that, as this type of warrior, we take up a cause that has no chance of winning. Like that's one of the funniest parts. And then him coming to protect them in that bar where the Romulans is like, like, get out of here. You're no good. Like, you left us and this, that, and the other. And he has to sort of, deal with, at some points he had some missteps. So that's one of the things that I liked about it. I mean, I understand that the thing is that all of all of the Next Generation crew are still around. So ultimately, you could do a Riker thing where Riker's running the show and Picard comes and says hi and that sort of thing. But I think Jonathan Frakes also, he directed like 2 of the episodes. So I think his thing is never to actually become Captain Kirk. His thing is always to be behind the camera. He'll get into a chair, but he's not, I don't think his interest lies in doing another show.
Well, no. I'm just saying that his role, and you're right. Look, I like the cameos. That 7 and 9 cameo was great. I want to definitely see more 7 and 9, and we also see her motivation. One of her, she doesn't have children herself, but she adopted a former board. What was the name of that girl?
That's
who killed him for parts or whatever.
Yeah, that's one of the big parts to bring her in. That this other part of the synthetics and all this other stuff's going on.
Right, so it's the black market in Borg parts and synthetics and stuff like that. And so, I think to me that would have been, if the show ended on that whole thing, like what's going on, like we're trying to figure out there's the synthetics and stuff like that. There are elements of the show that were going too slow, and there are elements of the show that people rightly complain and say the pacing was a lot slower than it need be. But there was a lot in there. I thought there was a lot in there, and I didn't think it was bad at all. I think the pacing was there. There were sometimes, but I think the key thing is there was so much in the ideas that they threw into the series that they were like, we're going to just throw everything in the kitchen sink to make sure it works. And I think that it would have been better if they would have focused on only a couple of things and made up a little better. I mean, it's like every time they do a show, a new series, a whole new different group shows up. So this whole Romulan super secret group that existed before the Tal Shiar and the Romulan Empire. It's like, what? It's like, to me, it comes to with Star Trek is that they can't figure out a new villain. And so let's go to the old standbys. Klingons, number 1, they use them in Discovery. The Borg, number 2, and number 3, the Romulans. I'm like, at this point, yo, bro, come up with something new. It's supposed to be moving forward. And yet we're constantly mining stuff in the past. The Klingons were the main thing in Star Trek.
You have a franchise that's broken, and we have to accept that it was an easy, like, in the stretch of the Next Generation, the Space Nine, Voyager, and then Enterprise. At that point of Enterprise, the series is limping because they were like, oh, we'll always be able to find another set of characters. I think even in the books, they've done some characters that haven't existed in film. So it's always something where you could create sort of this new sort of world. But it was broken at the end of Enterprise. And that's when the movies were like, well, the movies will kind of continue. And then the movies were broken. So when you get to the part where they did the relaunch, the reboot with J.J. Abrams? No, was it just J.J. Abrams? Who?
J.J. Abrams, yeah.
J.J. Abrams. So you had that, and those ones were, the first two were kind of successful, but it wasn't bringing back where we were with the original series, how big that series was. So then you have this thing where they're like, I think they were, doing, I think, decent in comic books, but that's where I got to understand that a lot of times they ask for certain things. They ask for a mirror universe, they ask for the Borg, stuff like that. So you're going to see stuff that they finished in the original series, like, because there's a semi-Borg plot in Discovery, so it's like you have this, and then you have the Borg sort of, and then you have Seven of Nine go into that and start up the Borg cube, and then she has this moment, and then she comes out of it. So we don't know if that's going to be another element. So what they're dealing with is the stuff Paramount likes, and they'll say, we want to see this, we want to see that. It's a movie thing. It's not like they're not taking the Bible and saying, if Rick Berman, because I've done jokes about it, if he was still running it, he could give the feel that people like, which is the feeling he was the holding the torch. Was it Braga and Berman? Is that who those guys were? Those two guys, I keep saying just the one guy. They sort of were holding the torch, but then at the same time, like, Paramount is like, well, what works? We're dealing with.
And look, I understand there is definitely, I understand that there's definitely, what do you call that? A push to get something to sell. It's hard, especially when there's a lot more eyeballs and stuff like that. When they were doing the Star Trek film shows, and Star Trek Next Generation showed the popularity, was syndication, right? Mm-hmm. Back then, you didn't have all these cable, the cable, but not to the degree they were. Cable was probably like 10 or 20, probably, let's say, at max a 30% of the audience. But
most people, in the stage where it was, the syndication was like Baywatch.
Yeah, and they had a lot of shows. They had syndication, they had Baywatch, they had
what's that thing? Hercules. Yeah,
Hercules, Andromeda. And so these were hour-long and successful TV shows. And this was all because Star Trek The Next Generation showed, hey, how this could be done. Mm-hmm. And there was this, it wasn't a huge moment in time. It was probably a decade back around where they were able to do all these shows for a while. And by the time Enterprise came in, the landscape had changed. Mm-hmm. These syndicated shows just couldn't be supported with the amount, especially something as big as Enterprise. Enterprise has a huge, cost relative to some of the other syndicated shows. And so they couldn't cut down on that and at least give the customers what they wanted. That show really needed to be...
Are you defending Enterprise right now? You're taking the time out of this show to defend Enterprise?
Look, Enterprise had a huge host of issues, and one of the reasons I had issues with a lot of things that they did. But I can also understand why they did some of the things, like you were just saying. I know we keep digressing, but getting back to this whole thing, if the Soji arc and Borg Reclamation Project was pretty great, and when you had 7 and 9 actually come there to make a difference, the very fact that Eleanor decided to stay to help her because it was a lost cause was also pretty interesting. I just find that I see the Eleanor role in so many other shows, and in what's this other guy? Jason Momoa. He was in a space show at one point. I don't know what's it called, Stargate. The warrior. There's always like the warrior guy in the background who's there to help you.
I can agree that it's not necessarily an original thing. I think when he was on the Borg cube, and it showed that he wasn't just going to be able to beat up everybody. I think that's where it showed the shift to say, you know what? Yes, this is the same, but no, this is like he can't just come in and just beat up everybody. And that's the thing that I think Firefly or Serenity, with a chick who's doing karate who just basically didn't say anything in the show, just starts beating up everybody, and she can't be beaten anymore. So they didn't forget that sort of thing, and you needed 7 and 9 to do what she did, and then 7 and 9 almost gets killed by Narek's sister. So it's like Larissa is like really almost taking her out. So it's one of those things where you had someone that was that skilled, and they didn't forget it. So I can see that, but it was interesting to have this. I mean, one of the things is when you put together these sort of, and this, I've mentioned Firefly a couple of times. This crew is sort of feeling like they were doing almost a Star Trek Serenity type of thing with Picard, but at the same time, and that's one of the things, when they got the specialists, when Picard goes up let's go back to the last part, which would be with the synthetics and the creator of the synthetics, who obviously is looks exactly like Data. Like, let's go to him. Like, when they get to that world, we get to see Soji's other sister, which is the actress played as the same person, and she successfully kept us thinking that there are 3 different people here, and a lot of different twists that happen on this thing. And at that point, and then when it gets Picard at a moment where he's in the ship alone with that woman, and that's why they kind of allowed us to try to like her again, but you can't get past the murder, of course. But he has a couple real funny lines in there. So I think that's where you get where he, at different points, he wasn't piloting the ship, but he has to, it's
yeah, but that is where, I don't mean to cut you off, but that is where I kind of lost it at the last part of it. There was a bunch of issues with the first part, but at least I enjoyed it. I could get through some of that.
What didn't you enjoy? I had that just quickly.
But the last part was that, I felt that if they should have made that whole subplot of the Romulans, the destruction of the universe, that should have been like a 2 or 3 season arc. I think by pushing everything together in one shot, it just rushed many different plots and stuff. And at the very end, it was like, did we really need this? I mean, there's enough stuff to mine with the Romulans, the Borg Reclamation Project, the chaos in the universe being caused, Starfleet and the ways it reacted, and the Soji, of course, just finding the world itself. But then on top of that, finding that there's going to be a whole another alien group of synthetics that exist outside of their time and space, and they need a portal to come back in. It's just like, what the fudge? What the fudge? I don't know. And so that's why I was like, this doesn't seem like what I would talk about Star Trek, because you're not trying to understand what it is. One of the things is science and understanding what and why things are. The marvels of the technology, the marvels of the places that you're meeting. And you're not getting that. You're not meeting new races and saying, hey, this race communicates by burping.
No, but that's the thing. They didn't sell you a show that was about a 5-year mission.
No, you're right. But I'm just saying, I just thought it was too much. I think like you have that monster behind you. It's a play in sci-fi, in fantasy. There's an author I read. His name is Feist, and he has this thing where they have someone opens up a portal, and all of a sudden all these alien monsters start coming through. That's one book, and there's another book by the guy who did The Witcher, where somehow there's the worlds converge and alien monsters start coming through, and it's a common theme. But you then develop it into something else. They stop it, and so what happens after that? It's like in Titans, you have Raven. Her father's trying to get through, to the next portal. He's a monster, clearly, and yet here it's like, all right, we stopped the portal, everything's good, or did we stop the portal? I think it's just that it was. If they're going to do that, it should have been a much longer game plan. And I think that there was just so much for Picard, more development of some of the other characters. It would have been a better show overall. I'm not saying I hate it. I'm just saying that I've been very critical of Star Trek in the last couple of iterations, and there's so much potential. But I think that it's It's tough because I know they have to make money, and so they're going to have to throw whatever they can at these shows to do it. But I just don't want to burn these books too. I don't want to get rid of my.
You got to put them next to your chest, closer to your chest.
I don't want to burn this book.
There we go. Here we go.
I don't want
to burn any books.
I burnt the other books. I couldn't. I nearly burnt this one too, but I was like, oh, this one I gotta stop. I'm telling you, a stack of it is given away.
I'm going to end it on this. Do you burn the Dark Knight for the Dark Knight Strikes Again? No, you don't. You don't do that.
But it's different because, like the encyclopedia, the Star Trek encyclopedia, they basically blew up the timeline on how things occurred. So you're like, okay, let's throw it out. At least with John, So it's like George.
Encyclopedia Britannica wouldn't have to be updated at some point.
You're updating it, yes, with additional information, and I can understand that. But when you make changes that are critical in how it occurred, you sometimes feel that these guys aren't actually reading this. They're like, oh, well, there's a book. Oh, put it away. It's just how we feel about some of the comics. Like, oh, there's a comic. Oh, put that to the side. You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, why would you go there? Why would you go there?
George Martin Lee says in his books, the narrator can be unreliable. So some of his books, like I have a couple of his, I have almost all of his books dealing with Game of Thrones. And so you have books that talk about the whole chronicles. But he'll say, hey, even though he's telling you this, he's a unreliable narrator. Or you can say the person who's actually most reliable is the guy not telling you a story, who keeps interrupting or whatever. And that's a device that they could use and say, oh, well, you know what? This stuff that happened initially in the encyclopedia, this was just stuff that is the official Starfleet propaganda. And this stuff is stuff that happens. And they do that in Discovery where it's like, hey, Section 5036 has been around a lot longer than we thought. And this is what they were doing. And it explains why it became so dark and so. And you're like, oh, that's cool, actually. That helps to bring it back. But that means one of those guys has to sit down and actually read a book. They have to actually sit down and watch all the episodes. So that's just my little comment. Overall, Star Trek Picard, should you watch it? If you're a Trekker, yes. You have to watch it just to keep on top of the stuff. Are you necessarily going to enjoy it? I don't necessarily think so. You know what I'm trying to say? You have to suspend a lot of disbelief, on my end.
Like, you can't do that. You don't do that in general? Lord.
Yeah, but there's certain things you want to hold up to a higher standard, like a gold. Okay? If Next Generation is gold and
Next Generation is gold.
Next Generation is gold, bro. Next Generation is gold. DS9 is gold. Voyager is silver. Enterprise is silver, and the original is just out there on its own, just doing its own thing.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. It's not being negative and positive.
Being negative.
No, without the original, it wouldn't have happened. So I always give props to the original.
You didn't.
I'm giving props. Props to the original.
Props to say that. Oh, I gave you back what I did in the cage. Like, basically, like, we can't. I know I'm holding you, but like this movie franchise, the original movie franchise was ruined by Roddenberry, regretfully, because he wrote up 2 scripts from the old days, and he had to, and then at the same time they had to take it from him. They had to snatch it from him.
There's so many problems with the movies. There's a whole host. Hey, I look, when I first see these movies, I'm so happy just to get anything. And so I will write up that review going, but when I have to see it again for the second time, and I have to really sit down and say, damn, and so I'm just saying, the promise, even with Nemesis, it's like the Nemesis movie was, and that they were Wonder Woman.
I'm bringing up John Byrne in this one because he mentioned that the Picard movies are almost like Picard fantasies. He gets in there, he gets to stand over the death of Captain Kirk, actually bury him, and then next thing you know, the next one, he gets tempted by the Borg, he gets a girlfriend in the third one, And then what do? Of course, in the fourth, they make the evil do. So it's all about Picard.
It's all about Picard.
Yeah.
It's all about Picard. Get his own clone. So that to me is one of the tragic problems with the movie. It should have been focused. I was hoping Next Generation would have changed that, but yeah. But then again, I understand the issues that they had. You know, I mean, I guess I'm making it up. They don't call me big business or nothing. I understand why they had to do it. It's just doesn't necessarily always translate into good TV. People who are loyal to the franchise are going to show up. They're just not going to necessarily be happy. So getting back to Picard, I would say, watch it. I'm not saying it's going to be a terrible love. I'm not saying you're going to love it 100%. If you, this really, what this series is to me, a reaction to Discovery. So it's a bit different in the pacing and how they went with Discovery, and how they went about it. So I think if you're not a crazy fan of Discovery, I think you can definitely pick this up as your series. If you like Discovery, this definitely comes into the area. It's just a little different, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. Petey,
well,
your
my
opinion?
thing is that it feels like Star Trek is kind of back. They're doing a lot of different things on CBS Access. Definitely, you got to watch the shorts at the same time too. There's a lot of fun stuff on there. I think some stuff that people kind of taking the wrong way, but definitely check out all that stuff. And Picard is no different in watching it because it's just a fun sort of series. And we get a thing where we have Picard, who's always been the stiff, stuffy sort of character, being thrust and not the man of action anymore. Basically trying to find his way and trying to connect with his former science officer Data and have to deal with, either finding him or never finding him again. So I say check it out because if you want to, you need to find out what happened to Data, what's going on with him, and you want to see where Deanna Troi is at. And they did some interesting stuff with her mind thing because they didn't do it like the TV show. It's like, Captain, I'm sensing, like she just did it, and they didn't really play up to that. So it was kind of some fun stuff there. So that's all I got. I say check it out. Big Business says it violates every book he ever bought on Star Trek. So
it's a different book. It's not. It's Star Trek. The brand is not It's Starfleet. And one thing we've all had, all those other shows all had Starfleet as a regular, as a central focus.
I am so happy they did not have Starfleet every other episode. That used to drive me crazy. I do not like them having to go back home or call home and say, can we blow up this planet? No, you can't blow up this planet. But he looks mad. He's stiffening up. The Trekker versus Trekkie commentary. There's no fun. If you didn't like the episode 3, then there's no fun in you.
I didn't say I didn't like it. I'm just saying there's some issues, and hopefully they'll remedy it for the second season. I like to always give most shows the first season good, but here's the thing we got to understand: for them to Star Trek is a very niche show, and if they don't continue, if they don't try and expand and make the corrections that they need to make the corrections of, like especially how they dialed back the Klingon thing because it was just so much.
What do you mean the Klingon thing in Discovery?
Yeah, and Discovery where they gave him back hair and all kinds of stuff, and not make. The thing is, hair? That's what they gave him back, and the prosthetics thing the makeup seems to be a little different. But what I'm just trying to make is that when you have a show like Witcher, which you're seen by tens of millions of people, and they need to set their game up and they need to connect with all those people. Picard cannot be the only end on and beyond. They got to do new stories, which they're doing with Discovery, but they have to do stories to capture the imagination of the people there. I don't know how they're going to do that. If there's going to be, if they're trying to make the CBS All Access the Star Trek all the time channel, and they're happy with the numbers, then that's them. That's their niche thing. But they're not going to be they've been out streaming before Disney. They're not going to get to that level. You know what I'm trying to say?
What are you talking about? You're trying to change it into something else. They're not trying to. They're not trying to. You're trying to put it to that's not going to change anything. You can't turn it into, well, they're not actually competing with Disney. They were before Disney. Disney came to the party late, and then at the same time, they're not going crazy with the things they're doing. They got that stuff. They got this. They got the what's it? The Twilight Zone. They got the Good Fight. They're not trying to freaking break the bank. They're trying to do stuff, and they have decent shows on there.
So the only option they're going to have is they're either going to have to get bought by Netflix, which is a rumor going on.
Well, they already have a connection with Netflix.
Right, so which is a rumor going around, or they're going to have to start.
They have a connect. They do that stuff. They put those shows on, and then they have a connect because you can see they're already connected with Netflix.
Oh, you're gonna see something drastic. You're gonna see a different change. Because remember, CBS used to be Viacom and CBS, and so they had a channel called Paramount Channel, and they had the CBS All Access. They're going to start bringing those two together. You know, either they're going to merge them together, or they're going to like have a more broader channel. Because what they're finding out, look at with Disney, you have different verticals. You have Disney, you have Star Wars, you have Marvel, and HBO Max is coming out, and they're going to be having more DC. They're thinking of bringing DC Universe into that, and they're going to have more Stephen King and some of the other movies coming in too. So they're going to have different verticals coming all together. And I'm just saying that to support something like this, to get more of a broader reach, they're going to have to get a bigger channel and something that's going to help them do that. You know, and the only way that's going to happen is either
you're changing the discussion to say that they need to somehow become bigger when basically they just doing a TV show on their network, not saying, all right, how is this building the brand? And that's where you get lost trying to say, you know what, we need to make the brand be this much. When, you know, Disney is in heavy water right now.
Listen, I gotta grab that. But Spinarak?
Out.